Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy Wednesday. My name is Aniket Bulbule. I am a partner solutions architect, and thanks for joining Howdy Partner. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, Howdy Partner is our Twitch show where we bring on innovative partners who've built interesting solutions on AWS. And I'm joined today by my co host, Neha. Hey, Neha,
Awesome.
how are you?
Hello all. Good. How's it going, Aniket?
It's going good. I heard you're traveling to New York. How's that trip going?
New York is amazing. It is pleasant and the weather is very great as compared to Austin. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's good.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So, so who do we have, Neha, today? Which
So
part?
we have a very interesting partner. They are called Pyramid Analytics. So if you have heard of augmented analytics, Gen AI, they do all things interesting. They have an intelligence platform with multiple functionalities and whatnot. So they are very excited. We have multiple demos lined up. So yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, excited to learn more about pyramid analytics. And with that said, let's bring on our guests. So I
yep.
believe we have Dave and Joe. Hey Dave, hey Joe. Welcome to our
Hey
show.
guys.
Hey, good afternoon, Aniket.
How's it going? Happy Wednesday. We're almost at the end of the week.
Wednesday.
Yes. So tell us more about you both, Dave and Joe, and Pyramid Analytics, and what you do, what the company does, and what the solution.
Yeah, I'm glad to. So first off, thanks for having us this afternoon. Really a great honor to be with you guys. Pyramid's been an established vendor, really starting out in the business intelligence space for about 10 years. So mature company, lots of customers. We started out with a focus really in the Microsoft market, and in about 2015 decided to pivot, really broaden ourselves out. We still have some customers that use Microsoft products, but we're primarily focused on the large enterprise market. And it's a company with a very specific mission, which is to bring a broad set of capabilities to everyone in an organization, right? And so we're super happy to be with you. A little bit more about myself, and then Joe, you can introduce yourself. But I've been in the BI industry now for about 25 years, and my full-time job is working our partnership with AWS.
And hey, everybody, my name is Joe Beaubien. I'm located here in North America in St. Louis, Missouri. So I work with all of our Americas based, Canada, South America, and obviously North America customers, as well as new prospects that are coming on board and that are really interested in understanding what Pyramid's doing and what we're trying to solve for in the market. I know we're going to go through a lot of this, but we looked back, right, and we said, what are really the big gaps? What are the things that people are challenged with that are just reasons to wake up and just not want to go to work, right? When you're an analyst, how can we help solve those things? And that's exactly what Pyramid has really been designed to target and to help with in the market. So hopefully we can show you a little bit of that today and talk up what Pyramid is doing with our customers and things like that.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
is great.
I'm actually curious, Joe and Dave, like why analytics? What motivated you to like dive into analytics specifically?
Man, so from my perspective, I've been in analytics for about 15 years now. Came right out of college, jumped into analytics. It was a space for me that, man, there's so much potential and possibility, right? Even 15 years ago, we knew data was important, it was growing, but I don't think it had reached the level it is obviously today from what people are able to do with it, decisions people are able to make that are no longer gut decisions. And so for me, it offered a challenge, honestly, from a personal perspective on a daily basis. There's new challenges coming up with new clients, with every single industry. And so I embrace. I love that complexity. I love that challenge, and that's kind of why I came into it. I don't know if that was the question you were asking, or if it was just more a pyramid question. But
Oh yeah, no, just wanted to get your take on why you entered this field. What importance do you think? How important it is to the current landscape?
Yeah, I think for me, it's that intersection of technology and people in business, right? That it's the center of most management disciplines, involves data of some kind. and how it relates to strategy, how it relates to planning, to risk management, all kinds of stuff. And it's a very, very dynamic space.
And like, what's your best part of working in analytics as well as pyramid analytics? Oh, I see we have a lot of people loving technology plus people as well. So that's an awesome quote, Dave.
What do you like, Joe?
Again, for me, it's the challenge, right? Within analytics, there's a solution out there. It's finding it. It's working, to build off of what Dave said. It's working with those people, understanding the challenges, and that's what I wake up for every day. Is what can I do to help? And maybe this sounds a little kitschy. What can I do to make and help people spend more time with their families, or to go on more vacations because they're not worried about that, ETL job that's running at 2 a.m. that they may get an error on, right? It's those types of things that I fundamentally, I hope we're helping people with.
I know for me, it's watching, our customers, typically people who are in middle management, sometimes early in their career, not always, but assume positions of leadership and get recognized for that. I can think, I won't mention the name, but I think one person in particular that we had at the Gartner conference this year who got to present and tell their story in front of a whole room full of people. And it's really gratifying because, you see the people are changing their businesses. They're making an impact. I think that's what I like the most. But there's a lot of tech that goes into that, right? There's a ton that you got to do to get there.
Yeah, they say data is the new gold. So it's always it's fun to work with the new gold.
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, let's talk a bit about our solution. I know you've worked extensively with Neha. So if you want to just give us a brief background of what exactly does the solution do and how it helps address industry challenges or like domain challenges.
Yeah. So why don't you take that one and I'll just kind of build on it.
Yeah, sure. So from a high level, what Pyramid is bringing to the market is that convergence of 3 major disciplines. It's the business intelligence aspect that goes back many years, even decades. It's the data prep, which came a little bit after, and also the data science, which has made an emergence in the last decade or so of true value. We felt that out there in the market there is a very fragmented ecosystem that everyone deals with on a daily basis. Right? I decided to go buy 12 different point tools. And now I'm paying for that, either from an operational perspective or I'm paying for that literally because I have all these different licenses. And again, it's going to be a big theme. We kind of looked back and we did a lot of reflection on how can we make that process easier. And so we brought to market a platform that brings all of those disciplines together, really in an effort to streamline the way people get data. In a variety of ways, and in a number of different ways as well. Some people still like their standard Excel. Some people love interactive type of content. Some people still want their core reporting in pixel perfect type documents. Right? That's 4 or 5 different tools right now.
Yeah.
How can we bring that all together into one place? And that's really, again, kind of the goal of the platform. Dave?
Yeah, so you have all this functionality Joe was just describing, and we're going to show a good chunk of it to you, but you think about what are the outcomes you're trying to drive towards, right? And again, we're focused on enterprises. That doesn't mean we don't have customers that are smaller. We have some that are very sophisticated but relatively small, but their business is analytics. But really, cater to mid-market, upper mid-market, and larger enterprises. And the outcomes that we designed this platform to achieve for those customers, it's really universal data access, right? And analytics that meet people where they are. So as Joe was mentioning, people have different styles, they have different needs, different ways of consuming data. We want to make sure everybody in the organization can do that with all the data that they have and do it on a shared platform. So getting past that fragmentation, right? So that's the first outcome. The second one really is user engagement and adoption. There's one of the reasons there's so many tools in use for analytics and business intelligence is because people bring them on kind of as point products to do different things, and then they kind of fade out or they're successful in pockets. Our view is standardize on a platform and then drive adoption, right? Drive wide scale adoption, because if you get that, then there are other capabilities in the product that lets you collaborate, and you get the synergy that just comes out of the sheer numbers of people using the product and using, that proverbial single version of the truth, right? And then I think the third thing we designed for, and this is super important, I think this is where AWS and Pyramid do extremely well together, is architected for scaling, right? So, obviously scaling for query performance, consistent query performance as data volumes grow, but also not running into any artificial barriers around just the number of users that you can have on the platform. Some products, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, they just were never architected to go and go and go and go. And Pyramid is, you can just keep expanding that. And then the other aspect of scalability, which I think we'll touch on today, is TCO, right? Can you do it, without one admin team for every 100 users? I think that becomes a key thing. And so those are really things we want to focus on with you guys today.
Awesome. Yeah, we can just jump right into it and better understanding of the solution and see a demo.
Yeah.
I believe, Joe, you have a presentation as well that will just give us a brief overview.
Yeah, I'm really just going to tee this up, I think, with 2 or 3 slides, and then we'll have Joe dive into the product to give you an overview. But, so I laugh because, everybody talks about data-driven decision-making, and it's like, yeah, it's only like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years old, right? It goes back to the first accounting systems that were developed. Right. We've been doing this for a long time. People make data with decisions with data every day. It really comes down to kind of a question of style, and that's what each of these layers represent, is just an evolution of techniques, right? Of descriptive analytics, maybe what we consider traditional reporting, up to diagnostic analytics, giving people the flexibility to analyze and visualize data, and then up to machine learning with predictive, and now prescriptive analytics that is quickly expanding to include things like simulation and optimization. And then now, the human AI interaction paradigm, which is, that's going to work, right? You still got to work out some kinks as an industry, but absolutely going to work, right? And so it's an evolution. And I think most of the typical enterprises are right there in the middle. Most people have gone through a couple of phases of descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics. They're doing machine learning, and now they're really trying to say, okay, what do we do? So the challenge then underneath that becomes this increasingly diverse data estate, right? Just the variety is unreal. And of course, this is where, AWS got into the business, and have been doing this for several years now, talking about data lakes, right? We can put all that data in one place, which gives it the potential to be used together. But the real challenge here is getting this to all work together. The interoperability in our industry is horrible, right? We kind of stopped with SQL. It stopped a long time ago. Actually, the SQL standard continues to evolve, but for the most part, there aren't a lot of standards once you get above that data and application tier, which is what makes this really interesting. So, this is really what people want to do. And unfortunately, companies have built a lot of technical debt in between that data layer and the layers above. And don't have to go into all the reasons. Some of them are people related, some of them are methodology related, some of them are just, hey, we've acquired a bunch of tools. But we believe that people are not in an ideal position to really move into that prescriptive layer and the upper AI layer until they can get some a better grasp of their foundation. And that's really what we want to help them do. Oh, next slide, Joe. So we all want to make data-driven decisions, right? We're going to really talk about 3 different challenges. I think number 1, we've already kind of been hinting about, but different roles or personas have different tools. So our goal is to share data and analytics across user categories, but it's difficult, right? So if you kind of look at the bottom 4, we talk about, peripheral recipients, basically people that give burst reports, casual viewers that need some interaction, but it's very, very minimal. Maybe they're just going to slightly interact with the dashboard. You have active viewers that really do want to start to do investigation. You have business analysts that really are chartered with doing that deep understanding of what's going on in the business and preparing content for others. Those folks, oftentimes they use different tools just for historical reasons, but one of the big challenges, they're kind of isolated from the data scientists, right? And that historically hasn't been that big of a problem. Data scientists have their own tools. They also kind of have a different culture way of looking at data. So, we're faced with a situation where people are using different tools, different roles. Some organizations have already moved to standardize. Others are pursuing agility and just kind of letting things happen, right? But we find it's just a big, big challenge. And then on top of that, and this becomes a real issue, you've got the BI developers and administrators. And because there's so many different tools and so many different languages, and there's not any interoperability, those administrators tend to become very specialized in tool sets. So they don't get this comprehensive view of the enterprise and content that would work across the enterprise. So that's really another problem altogether. And in addition to that, it typically creates problems around governance, right? So, this is what we see. It's kind of the state of the art. And of course, looming across all this is when people can't collaborate, when they can't share data or analytics, what do they do? They drop to the lowest common denominator, which is a spreadsheet. It's Excel, right? And then that creates all kinds of other problems. So the first thing we've got to do is really try to address this challenge. Next slide. So again, we've already kind of started talking about this, but our mission really is to tackle this problem for enterprises, right? So bringing appropriate functionality, role-appropriate functionality to all of the structured data that companies use, whether that's on-premise or in the cloud, and we're going to talk a lot about that, right? And meet those needs and get people into that access to data that is shared, even though they have different experiences and views, they're fundamentally sharing a common view or semantic layer, if you would, that allows them to kind of have a common point of reference for what they're talking about. And it's that really starts to drive the productivity and the adoption. That's our goal. Last thing I'll say about this, and then we're going to give you, I think, a demo next, is you'll see something at the bottom called Piranha. That's just it's the name of our, more than a query engine, but we refer to it as a query engine. It is really where we handle all of the calculation logic that customers are doing with the various modules of Pyramid. And we translate that into queries. And one of the things that's very powerful about this, and this will make sense when we talk about, for example, how we interact with some of the SAP systems, is we support both that SQL standard, but also something called MDX or multidimensional expression language. And we do that with a common tool set. And this is really critical for a couple of use cases that we're going to talk about. So rather than, giving you too many PowerPoints, I think the next step, if I'm right, is let's just, Joe, maybe you can give everybody just a high-level overview of what Pyramid's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go full screen here. Zoom in just a little bit so everyone can see. There we go. So this decision intelligence platform that we're talking about here, and all these different components really are materialized in a view that you're seeing right here. A couple things just to note, right? We are driving everything through a browser experience. There is no thick client. There's nothing for people to install. We've seen the challenges. We've learned from others' mistakes by limiting themselves to computer hardware and CPU, things like that. And so everything we do is going to be driven out of the browser, essentially managed through a services-based architecture. Now, the platform itself offers up a lot of functionality to many different types of users, and all of that can be controlled by profiles. But the first one, and where it really all begins, is with that modeling component. This is where you're going to connect to your data. You're going to prepare it, right? You're going to model that data, and this is also where you're going to start to inject machine learning at the data level. And we're going to dive into each one of these components as we go through here today. Be patient, we will get there. But that modeling is really the foundation. That's the semantic layer that everything is built off of. The discover is what some would consider the commoditized aspect of our business, right? It's the visuals, it's the reports. But again, think about this in a different way, right? How can we bring things like forecasting, right, regressions, time calculations, all of these things that in other technologies are going to require coding. They're going to require a higher level developer to come up with. How do we deliver those to the standard analyst, maybe that's just out of college trying to find their way and answer questions, right, in their new position? Discover does a great job of what we call simplexity, right? Making the very complex operation simple for the most basics of users, right? And that's really a common theme with the whole platform. So we'll dive into here as well and take a look. But this is also where, even though complex multidimensional queries can be tackled by sophisticated end users. So it's really up to you how you want to bend and mold your data to get the analytics that are required. Formulate is a really interesting aspect of the technology that a lot of our customers find value in because it centralizes the standard business logic and calculations for an organization. It also centralizes things like your ML scripts. So if we think about that fragmented nature that we were talking about earlier of most organizations, I have one tool for data prep, and I'm doing a lot of calculations of my metrics. I have another tool, right, doing the analytics that I'm likely doing similar calculations. I have yet another data science tool that is needing those same calculations, but remember, they don't all talk to each other, right, because they're three different tools. And then I need to take the output of all of that into some type of pixel perfect report, right? I now have calculations in a lot of different places. So the value of having this inside the platform as its own module is that all of that can be done in one place. And whether you're building visuals or reports, whether you're leveraging a tabular-based modeling interface. I am hesitant to call it an Excel-like interface for many reasons, but it is a tabular-like interface where people can come in and do those things that they typically do on their spreadsheet tools on their desktops, but in a more governed enterprise way that allows for less leakage and risk, right? It allows for those same calculations to be presented in a number of different ways. One might be through Present. Present is the dashboarding aspect, or the decision boards, as we like to call them, right? This is where we're getting a lot of notoriety for our augmented intelligence right now. I know they posted the Gartner reports in the chat over here. But being able to present an end user with maybe a seemingly complex visualization or collection of reports and visualizations, and allowing a non-technical end user to make sense of them through generative AI, through smart insights and what we call smart insights, narratives, and explain capabilities. These are the features that are really grasping a lot of customers' attentions in the market right now because it allows more people to consume data on a lower level of entry, and something we're really proud of. And then we have again, those same calculations or that same content that was built in our discoveries, right? All the charts and reports that are not only interactive, but they're in our publications. This is the pixel perfect core reporting, right? I want to reuse all of that content, but in a more standard format. I want to be able to schedule it out to 10,000 of my different agents, and I want everyone to get their piece of the pie without having to create 10,000 versions of that report. As crazy as that sounds, we have run across that use case, right? And so this is the platform, including infographics, data-driven visuals that make up the decision intelligence platform that Pyramid has come to the market with. Again, the goal here, trying to fill the gaps in standalone visualization tools or standalone data prep and data science tools. How do we bring all that together? And I think we've done a fantastic job of doing that seamlessly and in a way that is easily digestible and adoptable by many different types of end users in an organization.
Hey, Joe. So it's really great that we can unify our data in one place from multiple sources. You used a term called augmented intelligence. For our audience, can you expand on that, what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone hears the term AI and ML, right? It's everywhere. It's the latest buzzword that none of us love. AI, from an analytics perspective, from our perspective, is really referring to not artificial intelligence, but actually augmented intelligence. And augmented intelligence is leveraging machine learning models, even basic type calculations under the covers to make sense of large amounts of data and surface up insights to end users so that they don't have to go through a 10,000, a million row Excel spreadsheet and try to find that one needle in the haystack. Augmented analytics allows us to look at that holistically, surface up the most important insights, and deliver those so that you can make decisions a little bit faster. And we're definitely going to show that, among other things, through the demonstration. So hopefully that answers your question now.
Awesome. That is great. Yeah, it does. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Joe. I think we have one question. Can you help startup tap into the ML platform to begin smart manufacturing analytics and processes? So is there a way our viewers can reach out to you to get, to dive deep into particular use cases and how pyramid analytics can actually help them out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure the best way to get in contact other than LinkedIn. We can definitely connect with you. Oh, never mind. I have your name right there. So we can write that down and get in contact immediately. That's fantastic, Mark.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll also share a link for a survey. So if you can just fill out your details, we can, Joe and Dave can actually get back to you.
Yeah, it's actually really a question. One of the things I didn't mention when we were talking about the company is, I talked about the enterprise audience that we serve in that market. I would say close to 50% of our customers are involved in some type of analytic product that they offer to others, right? It could be a data product. It could be analytics plus a data product. In fact, we had an announcement today with the Smolin Group, which is a very large OEM partner of ours who serves the retail and fast-moving consumer goods vertical, right? So we work with companies that want to build integrated applications, and we're actually going to talk some about that in the architecture because the product is ideal for extranet multi-tenant deployment. So I want to just kind of bridge back off of what Joe was talking about. So Joe talked about, and we're going to show it in more detail, but he talked about having multiple modules, each of which do something different, a different style of interacting with the data. So because of that capability and our ability to surface very useful analytics and the fact that we do it in a very governed, secure way, we've been able to take relationships that we've had with customers for 5, 6, 7, and in some cases up to 10 years and help them on a journey. It's not an overnight journey, right? It's something you build on. If you're going to build this shared experience and shared access to data, it's going to take a while, but you can get it to take root and then you can expand it. I actually believe the VA is the best example of this. Most of you, certainly if you live in the United States, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. They serve, 9 million eligible veterans each year with healthcare services, and they have deployed Pyramid at scale, right? So been working with them since I want to say about 2013. They're now up to 50,000 users and about 5,000 unique logins per day. To give you an idea, right? So there's people who have access, and a variety of them are always engaging, right? 200 different data sources, and just a small number of admins. I still find it kind of hard to believe. I know it's true that they manage this estate and the pyramid infrastructure for their organization with 2 dedicated pyramid administrators, right? So when you talk about cost of ownership, that's a big deal. So I only bring them up because they're a great example, right? You have to be committed to analytics to make it work. I mean, you have to, at a management level, be committed to it. And so you've got to take the long view, and the VA has done that, and I think they've been rewarded and recognized for doing that. So I just wanted to bring them up. So hopefully now you say, okay, now so Pyramid's telling me, yeah, let's have universal access to data. Let's have analytics for everyone. Okay, you're going to show me that. I think you can do that. What's the next challenge? So if you go to the next slide, I think where companies fall short, and it's hard, it's really hard, is in this area of user engagement. You build it and they will come, right? Well, Some of them will come, some of them will kick tires, some of them will use it, some of them will go away. The key, if you want to really be successful in getting people to integrate data into their decision making, is to get them engaged appropriately. That means some people might use Pyramid an hour a day. That means some people might look at a report that's emailed to them from Pyramid once a month. It spans a spectrum, but the whole thing should be you gotta get them engaged, right? And here's where it connects up to AWS, and where it really, here's the rub, if you would, right? So we want users to use more data. We want them to collaborate. At the same time, we're modernizing their infrastructure. We're taking things that are traditionally on-premise, maybe they're legacy and they need to be replaced. Maybe they're heirlooms. Maybe they're things that they just want to keep forever because they're so useful. But we're refactoring those. We're replatforming those. We're changing those, right? And so this user engagement challenge has to happen at the same time we're going through this modernization and cloud adoption journey, right? So there's some key things you got to do, we think, during this transition. So the first is you can't take things away from them. And I'm going to talk about that and give you an example next. You absolutely can't take functionality away from users. That's the number one thing that will kill an analytics initiative, right? The second is you do need to give them some upside. Okay, you're asking me to change, right? You're telling me about this pyramid thing, and I'm using product X, and this person there's using product Y, and I kind of like those. I'm used to them. I'm comfortable with them. You're going to take them away from me. What do I get out of it? So you've got to give them some upside, and this is where the AI-driven insights can really start to have an impact. You can give them things they haven't seen before. You can tell them things about their data, okay? And then this third thing, which is, it's about user engagement, it's about user retention, but there's another angle to it, is really getting this spreadsheet dilemma, I'm just going to call it a dilemma, under control, right? So, people get frustrated. I've got to log in, I can get to this system, I run a query against Redshift, I can pull the data out, I can format it, I can create a report, and boom, what happens? It goes into email, right? How do we get beyond that? If we can get beyond that, it's a win for the users, but it's also a win for the whole company, because we can start to address the security challenges, the governance issues. We don't have data leakages. We can audit who's accessing what. If somebody leaves the organization or they change role, centralized administration, we can make the change, and we can accommodate that and enable or disable them, right? This is the kind of thing that you got to be able to do when you're talking about thousands of users. So these are the three things that Joe's going to show you a bunch of things, but I want you to think about these things as we're going through it. Let's talk about a specific example. Or actually, let's talk about an enablement first, then we'll talk about an example. So I mentioned Piranha, mentioned that we call it a direct query engine. So we support different scenarios, right? I call this data modeling, really, but it's about change management, really. So you've got applications that are out there on premise that your users are using for analytics today, right? Can you connect to them? Yes, with Pyramid you can connect to them. You can connect to them day one. You can upgrade the user's experience of that, right? Some of these, like SQL Server Analysis Services or SAP BW, they come with existing models. We should use those models, right? Now you've got other applications in different scenarios. You've got, maybe your first Amazon Redshift data warehouse, or third-party data that you brought in, or IoT data stream, right? You can create a model against that, right? You can take connections to different systems and you can combine those and use data views, visualizations side by side in the same content, in the same report or presentation. And then finally, down there, you've got the data preparation capability. It doesn't replace enterprise data integration or ETL. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is giving users the ability to be agile, to combine data, to prove the value of it, and then to use the value they discovered to drive priorities for kind of the industrial engineering, if it's required for an ETL process. So this is about flexibility. This is about choice. What this means is on the right-hand side, when we're delivering that experience, we're delivering common experiences across all these scenarios. We're not going to yank an experience out for one database and plug in another one, right? So let's go to the next slide and let's talk specifically about what customers run into. Now let's talk about SAP specifically. You know, we partner closely with the SAP team at AWS. I think because we share a lot of values, particularly around customer choice and flexibility. If you look at these products on the left, right, I put them there just because historically they've been used a lot. They're what we call multidimensional online analytical databases, MOLAP databases. And really what they've been around for a long time. They're very popular. They really started out to give people the ability to have high performance navigation of hierarchical business data. You know, I need to look at my product hierarchies. And you looked at my channels, and look at my sales territories, my geographies, not just the standard calendar, but my organizational calendar. I need to look this across an organizational hierarchy if I'm a multinational. People have to do this to run their businesses. They're dependent on that. So we've got a lot of people out there that run, in particular, SAP BW. It's mission critical for them, right? So what happens if we say, oh, well, that's SAP BW data. I know what we'll do. We'll just take that out. We'll flatten it and we'll stuff it into an S3 bucket. And all of a sudden now it's a table. We strip out the metadata. We strip out the hierarchies. And what have we done? We've actually reduced their flexibility. So when you're thinking about a data lake, the first thing you got to do is say, how am I going to carry forward all the stuff that people are dependent on today? And this is really what Pyramid excels at doing, right? Another good example I would give you would be customers who think they can't move to AWS because they're dependent on analysis services. I've got to use analysis services. I live off this thing, right? You know, I've got Great Plains, I've got, you know, Microsoft Dynamics, whatever I've got. Well, of course you can. You could use Pyramid to connect up to analysis services, turn right around and use Pyramid to connect up to Redshift, to Aurora, to RDS, right? So you can start to mix and match these. And this is critical. And we've actually seen cases where some customers gave AWS a second thought because they said, oh, we didn't realize we didn't have to get rid of those analysis services cubes. So you can buy some time. You can buy me like a year or two maybe to make a more informed decision of what I want to do with that piece of the data estate. So this is unique to Pyramid, this period. And it comes down to that underlying Piranha engine that we were talking about. So I'm going to give you a very specific customer example. We go to the next slide. And, you know, it'd be great, Neha, if you could share the link for this if you haven't already. But Pyramid and AWS have a joint customer in Premier Foods. And Premier Foods runs their business off of SAP on AWS. So they've made that move of their S4 system, running it on AWS. They have SAP Business Warehouse. It's what they use for all the reasons I just mentioned to do their sales reporting, their financial reporting, a lot of their product planning. And they also have other requirements that aren't a great fit for SAP because they involve IoT data. They involve third-party supplier data. And guess where that ends up? That ends up in Redshift. So they initially spoke with us about trying to improve their daily sales reporting, which is really important. It's clunky, it's slow. They weren't getting reports out on a timely basis. They were spending a lot of money on staff. And they did that, and they said, hey, we're kind of curious. Can you connect up to this Redshift thing? Sure, why not, right? And not only did we do that, but then we turn to Redshift, and we take those hierarchies that we've got, those structures, and that slice and dice capability. And guess what? It works just great on Redshift too. And now you have to realize we're talking about two very, very different technology stacks. An ANSI SQL analytical database, column store, and Redshift, and something that's using MDX and an app server that, again, lots of it out there. It's not going anywhere, but has a very, very different approach, right? So these folks have been really significant in not only helping us understand, well, where's the value here for Pyramid with SAP, but also being willing to talk about it. So I'd encourage you to read the case study. I think it's great. And we're happy to, we think a lot of companies fall into this bucket. Okay, I think at this point, Joe, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you make this abstract a little more concrete for folks.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so what we want to dive into is a couple different use cases with a couple different personas around what Dave just mentioned. The first is, let's start right into that modeling side of things. Right, whether we're uploading a simple spreadsheet using heuristics to bring it all together, whether we are going through a wizard-driven approach, or just taking what we would consider a model pro approach, which, as you're going to see very easily, does not take a high level of sophistication to learn and navigate. On the left here, we have a number of different sources, everything from your mainframe AS400s to your modern day Redshifts and things like that. Your cloud sources, there's other sources. Dave was talking about those, MSOLAP cubes, analysis services, things like that. Even being able to pull data in with Python and R. So what I wanted to do was show a couple different scenarios. One, I want to be able to go into my Redshift. I want to be able to pull up some data. There's potentially 7 different tables inside of here, and use direct query. From this perspective, we are done. I have connected to Redshift, I've connected to my database, and we are now connected and working off of your data. From here, and I'll come back, I can choose any one of those different modules, and I can start working in with that data, regardless of where it's at in my organization. So it can be that simple to jump in and immediately start working with the data. I want to make one very important distinction about how we query data, because for those of you out there who are wondering, okay, how are you different and how are you getting this performance that you're talking about? Think about it, and one of the guys on my team uses this example, and I really like it. Think about going to a grocery store. You're going to a grocery store, and you want to go get a bushel of bananas. Right? When you go, you just go get the bananas. That's all you get from that grocery store. Right? You don't go get every single fruit, bring it home, right? And then say, I just want the bananas. Right? So from that perspective, we are doing direct query, right, with push down methodology. So we are actually passing the where conditions. We're passing the criteria and the calculations to Redshift or whatever source we're going after, and saying, hey, don't give me back 1,000,000 records. I want the 12 that I'm actually asking for based on this query that we've optimized and sent to you, right? So when people start talking about, oh, okay, well, you're going as my Redshift and there's 50 billion records inside of here, you're just going to spin, aren't you? Well, we don't, right? We're going to go get just the pieces that we need to build out our reports and our visualizations, and you're going to get the results back in your browser to see that information, right? So fundamentally, how we query is very different than some of the 15, 20-year-old legacy technologies that don't have a concept of that large scale of data and this concept of push-down query. Does that make sense, Neha and Aniket? Does that?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Absolutely. No, I think that does make sense. I'm just curious, like, is there a trade-off in terms of how quickly the query would get executed? Because in my experience, the more complex you make a query, the longer it takes. It'll give you the results, but then how do you manage running that complex query and retrieving only that subset of data that you would need, but also running it very quickly without hampering performance?
Yeah, and I think that's really the beauty and the power of that Piranha engine that we've built, right? Mm-hmm. That's somewhat of the secret sauce, but it's allowing you to do the sharding inside of the query. It's allowing you to, again, construct that query, especially in the native language of the source you're going after, to pull back just the data you need as quickly as you can. A lot of technologies are just going to pass SQL and say, okay, give it back to me.
Yeah.
Well, when you're talking to SAP BW, you need to do things like MDX, mm-hmm. right? Passing SQL to MDX and hoping for a translation is not going to work out for you. Right? The beauty of our Piranha engine is that we actually generate that MDX or that optimized SQL depending on the source we're going after. So we're getting excellent performance while also, getting you just the content that you need. I think this is also really important, and some cloud data storages may not like us for this concept, so bear with me here. But since we're pulling back a whole lot less data, right? There are potentially lower charges that are happening for that end user because we're not just pulling back millions of records every time we run a query, right? And I think from a customer perspective, there's a lot of value in that. I see there's a chat or a question in there.
No, there's no question. But I had a question, Joe. So since we were talking about SAP and how you make it easy to move data, and as you know, like the costs with movement of data have increased a lot. So how does Pyramid deal with that issue? Like, is it the same way you were explaining that you don't query the entire underlying data?
So that's a great question. So that rolls right into our second example here. So if I were to say, hey, I'm going to add all these tables inside of here from Redshift, and then I want to come in here and maybe I want to blend it with some Excel data that I have. Let's pull some off my desktop. I think there's some let's see, your customer demographic type data, right? And I want to start blending all of that together. What I'm doing here is, you're right, I have a lot of different options to only pull the data that I actually need as part of this process. It allows me to blend multiple different sources together. You're going to see I have a lot of preparation options inside of here. So if I wanted to add something like a time intelligence, where I can break down my different date components, if I wanted to geocode or filter the data that's coming from here, that's all going to be possible inside of here. My column operations, maybe want to create new calculated columns, rename, convert, all the standard data prep type of options, but I'm able to build out that flow inside of here and click execute. The one difference that we have from a lot of the others is that, I'm not pulling this to my desktop. There's no data limitations that, it's what can my computer handle. It's all being run through the services-based architecture. And not until I actually click run is anything actually happening, right? So I'm not querying a bunch of data just to bring it in here. None of that's actually happening. So we're keeping the cost low and again, only allowing the end user to kind of get what they need to until they really need it, which is when they push that run button.
I think it also ties down to because I actually had the same question, like what if I have multiple data sources and I have like a very complex layout here that results in a very, very complex query or maybe even multiple queries. I think what you just explained also highlights that the queries itself and they are not only optimized in terms of performance but highly scalable because they can actually run in parallel to retrieve.
That's exactly right. They're running in parallel. So I can just real quick, I can show you one other example, and I'll come back to this one. But here's another example right here. So this is actually an API that's pulling in data. It's SQL Server data that's coming in. It's something from another cloud source. It's pulling in data with R, and then another maybe SQL Azure or something like that. That is all kind of coming together for us. We need to federate all of this together. We need to do our time intelligence, substring, masking, right? We need to do all of that work, maybe even doing some clustering, which we'll come back to here in just a second. And then ultimately the end result here should be that Redshift, right? We want to bring all of this complex data, bring it together, create that model so that's sitting inside of Redshift. And then the end user isn't having to worry about going to these 5 different places. It's going to Redshift. And that's where it's going to kind of be the system of record in this particular example, right? So those types of parallel processes and preparation are all handled, and we've just touched one module so far, guys, right?
Yeah, and I think it also highlights the significant reduction in time, because if you have to do this manually or through a very complex process, it's gonna be way more complicated, way more lengthy process. Rather than just a drag and drop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of our customers kind of see this for the first time and their minds start going, okay, you're saying I can do this, but I can then jump immediately into all the other downstream processes I want to do with this data. That's a no-brainer. So hopefully people feel the same. One of the other things that I did want to touch on was some of the machine learning capabilities. So, I can start off with something very simple, like my K-means WEC, it's a clustering algorithm. All I know is it's a clustering algorithm, right? And we built this really for those citizen data scientists, those individuals who say, I know my data, I can get dangerous with it. I'm not a coder though, right? And there's a significant amount of people in the market that say, I just haven't had time to learn Python, or, I'm just not proficient enough to put, company resources and money behind a decision made by my Python, which is actually very common. So how can I do those types of things? Well, I want to be able to come in and without coding anything, say, you know what, age, cars, children, income, these are all important variables to this algorithm. I want 3 clusters, just make it accurate. Or if I understand what percentages and iteration numbers are, great. But let's just make it accurate for me. And then I want to be able to kind of see what that looks like right now. So this is where we are passing a small query back to say, okay, get a small sampling. And I can see here is my k-means. I can obviously rename it and do other things with it. I can see a sampling of what that looks like from a distribution perspective, or I need to make changes. But I am now doing more with ML, and I am not having to be this highly sophisticated end user that deals with modeling. I get model scores. I can actually save this off and use it, at another time. A common theme you'll hear is reusability. There's no reason you should be developing the same exact content multiple times, right?
Yeah.
One of the other things that I did want to show, though, was, we have all of these tables that are actually automatically generated by Pyramid. It kind of created the SQL. It's pulling the tables back. You can see down here. But what happens if I have my own query? Right? I don't know SQL. What do I do? Well, I can use the latest in things like ChatGPT that allow me to say, hey, create a query. Let's see here. I don't know. For my top 5 customers based on sales. I have no idea, right? And so it's going to go out there and it's actually going to create the SQL that's needed to do exactly that, right? It'll even come in here and it'll explain the script that it just wrote. So if I'm truly a SQL novice, it'll even explain to me what the heck's going on, right? So that's giving me a level up in this instance so that I can be more effective in my job. Now, the exact same thing, as you can expect, is going to come from my Python. And actually, let's do something different. Let's not use that one. Let's use my products.
I love the build up with the SQL queries, Joe. I thought you were going to say like you can select something from pre-built queries, but now I think that Gen AI thing, like just using this in Gen AI in this particular scenario is like super powerful.
Yeah, right. Again, it's just all about saving time. And listen, it's coming from ChatGPT. We all know there's a giant disclaimer on things like that nowadays. It's supposed to help, right? It's something that I want to be able to give someone at least 90% of the way there, and they can make tweaks as they need to. So here's another example. Creating a very sophisticated market basket analysis is, if I can spell analysis, is something that's way out of my purview. No idea how to do that. But guess who does know how to create something like that, right? ChatGPT. So here is my model. And while this comes up, I can come in here and tweak this model. I can make changes if there's stuff, that I'm somewhat proficient in Python. It'll, allow me to make those changes and do whatever I need to inside of here. But again, it's going to create and generate that whole script. So I know truly what's going on inside of here. It's telling me what libraries it's using and so on and so forth, right? So that's all extremely valuable to me as an end user who's trying to put this model together. And then at the end of the day, again, all of this is going to go into Redshift. Connect all of them, name it something, and that's now something that's sitting in one of my Amazon-based data sources that anyone can do analytics on. It's now augmented. It's now, injected with some of that machine learning.
I think you've got I think you got all our viewers excited the moment Gen AI popped up. So there's one comment that I used to write code but never learned R Python, and I feel like this is built for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we're just getting started with that. We're going to sprinkle it around a couple other areas. You know, a lot of technologies are kind of throwing it in and saying, yeah, we're going to just open it up. But to truly find places where it's useful in everybody's day, I think our developers did a fantastic job of that. Right?
There's one question in the chat, Joe. So with ChatGPT, data will leave the customer account. So what about Bedrock?
Yeah. So with ChatGPT, the very important thing is that the data is not actually leaving, right, the four walls of Pyramid. It's never leaving your organization, right? What did I just come back here? I generated SQL. I generated Python, all things that are generated or publicly available, right, on the web. So nothing was actually passed to ChatGPT that was proprietary to your organization or that, you know, would put you into any kind of compliance concerns.
You know, there are some, it's interesting. It's a great question, by the way. There are some interesting, you know, use cases that are still emerging where we would send over information, maybe a database schema, right, over to ChatGPT. Eventually, and I think it's got a long ways to go, there will be direct analysis of numerical data that's done, whether it's done by a large language model or semi-automated in its operations through a large language model is debatable. But there will be situations where, yes, you're going to have more interaction of the private corporate data. And I think this is where the Bedrock model of having a foundation and then firewalled extensions, right, that you build with those foundation models will be really useful. It's a very, very dynamic space. I mean, we're doing stuff all the time, and you know, I think what we would strongly encourage anybody watching this, or you know, anybody at AWS, if you've got, you know, a prospect that wants to drive a state-of-the-art platform like Pyramid, talk to us. You know, we've got a great relationship with AWS, and we're happy to, you know, co-innovate together. So a lot of this is just going to come down to use cases, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's keep going if that's okay. So we talked about the modeling. Let's talk a little bit about where we go from there. So, you know, that might be someone in the organization that wears the hat of a data modeler, someone who knows how to work the ML type of capabilities. But maybe your standard analyst is actually just going to come in right here. I want to go create a new discovery, and I just need to do some analysis. Now, I have all of my different sources up here. I have a complete kind of catalog of everything that's going on, whether it's cube data, whether it's my Redshift data or anything else. I want to go ahead and open this up. Now, I could start by asking a simple question. I could open up some Smart Discover, which will generate content for me based on the data. But for me, I just want to open this up. And what I really want to start with is some trend analysis and kind of exploring what's available inside of here. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to look at my trends by month. I want to look at my forecasted amounts, and I want to create on the fly a forecasting measure for that. And so that should come up here and be something like, I like these step line charts. Like them, love them, you know, that's what I'm using. So immediately this is the forecast that I'm getting for the next 6 periods. So if this was days, months, years, by default, it's going to go the next 6 and do that. Now, a lot of questions immediately are, what algorithm are you using, right? We are using by default what we call best fit. So best fit actually runs all of these different models and says which one has the lowest error coefficient. Use that. So in 2 months when your data changes, and maybe it was using the whole winters, in 2 months when your data changes, maybe ARIMA is more accurate than the whole winters based on changes in your data. It will automatically make that change. So it's a kind of a switch in someone's head that they don't have to worry about that, you know, moving forward. Now, if you want to address things like frequencies and outlier sensitivity, if you're someone who says, listen, I have a great model in Python, I want to use it, go for it, right? We actually support multiple environments for things like Python because we all know that not every version of every library is going to be used for everybody. You can't just standardize on one library version. You're going to have 5 or 6 to run any given model. So you got to have flexibility, and that's exactly what Pyramid does with that multiple environment kind of approach. Let me take this back. There we go. So I have this. Now I want to be able to, also do some aggregations on the fly. So, something like my average sales cycle days. Let's drag that up, do a secondary axis, something like a spline chart. Oops, sorry. Drag that, secondary. Let's do that spline chart. There we go. Right, and I want to see all of this by my different company sizes, so let's trellis it. There is a nice visual that I can bring together that's showing me comparative metrics with some forecasting that is going to be useful to someone who's trying to track how our sales are going, right, in this particular example. So I can come in here and save this. Understand there's things like best fit regressions, statistical analysis, Pareto's, clusters that I can do on the fly, identifying my outliers, even time calculations. This is a great example for what do people not like to do. They don't like to do calculations for quarter to date or quarter on quarter or last 7 days. Those are miserable, right? They're always coding.
Yes.
What if we could just make them simple buttons that you click, and those are now parameterized options that you can work with, right? So I'll say it again, look back. What do people not like? Let's improve that experience. And this is a fantastic example of that, right?
Data-driven decision-making, right? In action.
In action, there you go, there you go. At scale and at speed, right?
Yep.
You need to make it. So the other example that I wanted to show inside of here was actually something against SAP. So if I come in here and I want to look at whether it's BW, whether it's HANA, it doesn't really matter. I want to look at some BW data. When we first look at this, you're going to see kind of 4 different databases. But we all know, anyone who knows BW or even just SAP in general, that's not really how it looks, right? It looks like this. I have multiple schemas and things like that. I want to look at my EMP data, and then there are all my different databases. I can click on one, and I have all of these models. Now, what's important to understand is that we didn't generate any of these models like we did in that last use case. This is all the business logic that people spent years and millions of dollars on, right, to make sure it is exactly what the business needs in order to be successful. You don't want to recreate all of that work in some other tool. So we're going to read that business logic layer right from Pyramid. That's one of our big key differentiators here. And again, you don't see all those models. What are those really? Those are a bunch of BEX queries, right? Someone said, I can't go after all this data. It's too big. So I'm going to create a bunch of BEX queries for the exact use case that I need. Fine. That's a good strategy. No problem with that. I want to go after that giant cube, though, right? I want to choose my language. And then I want to be able to set things like key dates. What point in time do I want to go back to? And then I can open this up. And what I want to do is I want to, show my customers a simple request. I want to look at the gross amounts and the order quantity. Right? There's order quantity. Now, what you're immediately seeing and what the value is of not moving your data out of SAP, but actually going directly at it, currencies, formatting. What if I were to hover over Becker Berlin? Hidden properties, right? All of this is lost the second you move your data out of SAP. And it has to be rebuilt in whatever system it is, right? So there's some value in it going directly at this. Now, I want to be able to do some quick calculations like, let's create a ratio. I want to be able to just rename this real quick. Ratio. I want to be able to drop in things like my calendar year. Let me drop that right up above the values. There we go. I want to hone in just on, I don't know, let's just pick these 2 years. They got full data. Oh my gosh, sorry about that. Pushing the wrong button. I want to focus just on those 2 years. And then I want to do a year-over-year growth comparison. Now, everything I did in 5 clicks in the last 10 seconds would require a lot of coding
Yes.
Right? And it would just flat out not be possible. So I created a metric-based calculation with ratio, and then I created a dimension-based calculation that also had the metric-based calculation in the query. And if I look down here at my benchmarking, where's all the time spent? It's all spent on BW because we're pushing that down to the database to resolve the query, right? And we're also doing that not in SQL, but we're doing that in MDX. This is the proof of the performance, Neha, that you were asking about earlier, right? And the value of being able to create, queries in the native languages of the sources we're going after. So these types of fairly complex operations are very simple, right, within Pyramid. Even if I were to go in and, create some type of grouping inside of here, right? Oh, did I create the grouping? Yeah, there it goes. And so I can see what that looks like down here at the bottom. It's all going to aggregate correctly. I'm going to get the little star because it's mixed currencies, for those of us who know it. And even when I create that calculation, if I open up and formulate, you're expecting a coding area? Well, guess again, right? This is a kind of not a cube, but what's the word I'm looking for? It's just a visual interface for coming in here and creating those calculations or those groupings or whatever it's going to be, right? So again, try not to overcomplicate that experience for the end user. And if I wanted to at any second say, I don't want to see customers anymore, that's not what's important. Well, am I going to lose all those different calculations and everything? Absolutely not. Right? I want to look at the hierarchy that is generated and lives in SAP, and I want to be able to take advantage of it immediately. None of this was ever built in Pyramid, right? So a lot of value, not just in Discover and how we can manipulate and slice and dice very complex multi-dimensional data, but just in that partnership with SAP.
So, quick question here, Joe. So,
Yeah.
if I create like such complex, amalgamation of this whatever data I have in my SAP, then how do I is there a way I can save this in the format of a report or share it with different teams? Like, how do I actually replicate this, or is this does this get stored on the Pyramid solution itself?
Yeah, so this gets stored within Pyramid. So you can share, obviously, this content with anyone you want to. So if I were to go and save this, you can see I have either my content, I have work groups, which is based on roles, or I have kind of this public content area so people can immediately access it. Or I can jump right into a new presentation. And this new presentation, whether it's a presentation or a publication, which we'll talk about the difference, I can come in here and, I guess once I save this, we'll just save this as. Oh, sorry, that's in the group. My bad. My fault.
So when you click this save, it gets saved in your local system, right?
In our repository, yes. And then I can simply drag that onto the page. So think about the concept of what I just did there, right? I didn't have to integrate with another tool. I didn't have to export this and then import it into something else. I simply walked through my analytical pipeline, and I've ended up in a place where I'm now ready to share with someone. And whether I'm sharing this one piece of content, whether I'm sharing, I don't know, what's another one? Here's that trend report that we just saw, right? By the way, SAP, Redshift, right? So
right.
2 different sources on one page. We'll get to that here in just a second. But, it's kind of just think of it as an open canvas, and you're ready to start sharing this with individuals.
But then if I do share this with, let's say Neha, right, can she actually change this formulas or whatever complex mechanism complex methodologies I've used?
If she has that kind of analyst right, she has the ability to go in and do a save as, ideally, so that she can kind of take what you started and make changes as need be. If you give her full-on read-write access to something you've already done, she would potentially have the ability. But I think what you're talking about is if I take this presentation, I share it with her, she doesn't exactly have access to the underlying environment to go make changes. She's just a viewer at that point, and she's consuming the information.
Right. So there is a possibility to like even collaborate on joint, like creating joint reports, right? Like run your own custom formulas, and then like modify the data based on what you need it for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
We'll get to that kind of now. So what we put together is this is just a simple example. It's coming from 4 different sources of data, all using direct query, all being brought together into one single pane of glass. Okay, so we didn't have to merge the data at the modeling level. We didn't have to single source anything, right? So think about it as 4 separate queries, 4 different databases. I brought all this together, and I simply want to run this. And maybe this is something that is, and we'll get to this in just a second, delivered out to individuals via Teams. Maybe it's something delivered out via email. You kind of have options. There's also an internal library that if it's too sensitive, you can come in and log in. We can talk through that as well. But there's multiple ways people can get access to something like this visual dashboard, including embedding, which we'll talk about as well. So I'm going to take my analyst hat off, right? We've talked about the modeling of data. We've talked about the developer content. We're building out these decision boards. That person is now gone. I have delivered this out to my end users. I now have my end user hat on, and I'm looking to make decisions. What are my options, right? I can see here that, again, I'm trying to remember all the different sources this one's coming from. We have some Oracle. I think this one is Redshift. This one down here is IMDb. This one over here is SQL, right? So a lot of different places. What I have, though, is the ability for all of them to talk together. Now, what we just did there is actually very, very sophisticated, right? What we did was we had 4 parallel queries running. We passed where conditions from one of those sources to the other 3, right, and allowed for that interactivity in one single pane of glass. So one of the challenges that we see that we address from a user adoption perspective is, and I won't say the company, but she said, there's a woman who said, listen, we have 6 ERPs. And I said, okay, great. I said, is it possible to get a single view of those? And she said, yeah, I have no problem with that, actually. And I go, great, can I see what that looks like? I'm really interested. And she took a picture of her office. She had 5 different screens. That is not what a single view looks like. That does not count, right? And so we talked through this scenario where we said, okay, what if we could kind of paint that single pane of glass with interactivity between all of your different data sources? And she absolutely loved that. Now, if I'm an end user and I'm coming in, let's say I'm a VP of sales, I have a lot of questions. The first question I have is, what the heck is going on with my services? I know that we're having a hard time qualifying them. And you know what? It's continuing to go up. I need to build an alert. Okay? Simple thing. If this continues to go up, even by like 2%, that's a bad thing. I need you to check every day at 5. Send me an email, send me a text message, send me something in my Teams channel. I need to know when this threshold is broken because it affects how I run my business, right? So I need to be proactive and give the end user that type of enablement to make those types of alerts happen for themselves, right? I can obviously go more advanced and say, hey, it's not just for me. My entire team of TCAs need to see this, and so I can share with multiple channels, multiple emails, things like that. But that's the first thing I really want to get a hold of is if this keeps going up, I gotta make some changes. The second thing I have a question about, though, is this manufacturing. That's new. That was over here last week. What's going on with that? And so this is where some of our augmented intelligence is going to start to come into the picture, right? So if I look at this and I say, explain to me what's going on. Now, I'm sure you've had at least a dozen explain tools on this show, and I don't want to be just another one. So let me be very clear. What we're doing with this is fundamentally different in the fact that, one, we're directly querying the source. I don't have to create a lens. I don't have to move my data into a proprietary source. I'm not sending your data or the insights outside of the Pyramid 4 walls. It's all happening within our product. Those are all very, very important distinctions, right? Now, let's think about the most important thing people want to know, right? Where is this mostly allocated? 1 billion to 500. Okay, that's helpful. I can see that. I have a narrative, some influencer insights. But what is the business actually asking for? They want to know what factors are actually driving this amount higher. So don't just tell me that it's out of whack. Tell me why. Well, if you go above 39 sales cycle days, it's impacting this metric. So set an alert for 30. If I go after, companies with employees that are less than 71,000, again, we're talking about manufacturing here, that's a problem. Is selling into this type of organization or this type of industry cyclical? Because the date and the time have an impact. I, as an end user, this VP of sales, now know where to go to impact change within how we approach marketing. With how we approach manufacturing.
I think if you had to do this all, without the tool, you'd need a bunch of analysts and a few years to even get that much insight.
And listen, I'm not in the business of putting analysts out of business. Coming out of college, every analyst from my perspective wants to hit hard-hitting questions. How do we, turn this around, or how do we help answer the questions to make whatever company I'm with even better? What do analysts not want to do? They don't want to dig through a million records in Excel and hope to come up with something that's insightful to you, Mr. VP.
Yeah, I think it's also beneficial for analysts as well, right? Like now the time that they were spending digging through that, that data itself, now they can spend it on actually creating these insights, actionable items as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's take that even a step further. Okay. I pride myself in creating visuals that are compelling, that are rich and vibrant, and no one understands them. Right? Marketing is built on this concept. Sorry, it's been bad with marketing. Right? I have a simple bubble chart that I created, and I created this chart not too long ago. And I'll be honest with you guys, I have no idea what this chart is trying to tell me. And this is rampant across all dashboard type, deployments. And I always tease, clients and say, the sales rep will give you $100 if you can give me one insightful thing, and a lot of money. But what if we could empower someone and say, you know what, looking at this, I don't understand it, but hey, here's a narrative that we just generated for you. Here are the basic facts that you should know. Some top and bottom, Pareto, some relationships, some trends. Is it trending in a positive direction? Is it negative? Right? So for someone coming in, this is going to help me understand what I should be focusing in on, because I don't understand this chart. I can go a step further. What's something a little bit more, sophisticated? We start dealing with R squared models and can get a little bit more detailed as needed inside of here. Maybe even start to draw some outlier type items that, on a bubble chart, maybe I can see things that are really kind of out of there. But if this was on anything else, I'm not going to find that, right?
Right.
What about categorical? If I look at this chart and I take this first piece of insight, it says that for total company revenue, which is my company sizes, for conferences, we're ranked 6 out of 8. We're not targeting the right companies. For the total forecasted amount, which is sales, for conferences, we're ranked 8th, last place. We're not making any money. And for sales cycle days, we're ranked 8. It is taking forever. So we're not targeting the right companies. It's taking forever, and I'm not making any money. I am bad at conferences, right?
Right.
I need to make changes. Now, anyone on the call, tell me if they could have pulled any of that out of simply looking at this bubble chart. And I'll challenge you that you can't, right? Unless you have that narrative AI that is not spoon feeding it, but just helping you to understand the analysis. And this is why we're getting #1 ranks. This is, the next step that everyone should be striving for is how can I empower and educate my people? I hesitate to say the word data literacy, but let's drive that data literacy, right, for my end users. I think it's a great way to do that.
And these insights, I'm sure they are created using Gen AI and ChatGPT, right?
Right now, those are actually generated by an algorithm of a combination of machine learning models and basic statistics that we actually generated ourselves. So it's, take this as you will. We always tout like we had that internal chat GPT before it was cool, right? This functionality has been around for 10 years. And so we've been doing this against your internal data, which you're never going to expose to chat GPT for a really long time. Right? And we can take that a step further, right? I can actually open up a chat bot and say, you know what, this isn't doing it for me. Change to a grid real quick. And, instead of
also send a smiley.
What's that?
I also love that it sends a smiley.
Got nice little emojis, yes. I think that was probably something fun when it was doing internal testing, and they just said, "Oh, let's keep it."
Yeah.
I want to add in something like my year, and now I have year, and then show me insights. Sorry, I gotta spell it right, somewhat. Still gotta spell it right. Right, so there's new insights based on the changes I just made to this query that are going to be helpful to me, that end user. I can also, and I'll show this at the end, kind of start from scratch and ask other questions. But before I get there, some of the other really nice self-service capabilities inside of here are my 3 favorite buttons: swap, add, and dice. I don't want to see industry anymore, right? And today, if I need to make changes to a report that someone else created for me, I got to put it into a queue, or I got to go learn a tool. I don't want to do either one of those things, right? I want to be able to come in and say, you know what, let's look at company sizes. There's that 1 billion to 500 billion we saw earlier. Let's add in the industries, right? And maybe actually I want to drill this down, which is dice, drill anywhere, not down a predefined hierarchy, but wherever I feel like, into my opportunity stages. And I'm just interested in my closing, so let's focus on that. And then let's add in my companies. And now I have basically the equivalent of a spreadsheet. So what would be really nice is to be able to come in here, add some conditional formatting so that I can find the outliers inside of here. So what I've now done is self-served the answers to a question that I didn't even know I had. And where did I start? With a bubble chart I didn't understand. Right? All through this self-service interactivity. And this is, again, where we're getting a lot of crowdfare right now, is that people are saying, yeah, I'm tired of depending on tools. I'm tired of depending on that. I want to self-serve and send stuff out to my end users and let them answer their own questions to a degree. Now I can start this whole thing over and say, you know what? Show me top 5 lead sources by forecast amount. Right? Oh, sorry. Well, there you go. Live demo. That's what you're going to get inside of there. So sorry about that. Let's just rerun all those queries. Okay. Well, we'll just do it on a different one. Come over here. And actually start from scratch. Okay. Well, we're not going to do that right now. But the point is that I can come in here and all of that is available to me. Ask whatever questions I need to. I'm going to pause there for a second. I've been talking for a little bit. Let's talk a little about what you just saw, the value that is there, and any insights.
Yeah, I can talk. So I believe this is like a one-stop shop for everything. If I'm interested in analytics, there's like, I want to bring in data from multiple sources, do some transformations, aggregations, and I also want to visualize and get insights. So like, I don't want to switch between tools. It would take my team less efforts because they don't need to be trained on multiple platforms. It's just this one strong portal, the intelligence platform, and they can do things end to end. So this is like super great. I just had one question, like, what is it that this platform is not having right now? Like, is there anything on the roadmap that you would like to share? Yeah.
Yeah, so the one big thing on the roadmap I'm excited about is really honing in on the true, real, robust coding data scientists, right? We've taken an approach of really enabling the citizen data scientists, giving them pre-baked models, even exposing some Python and R. But for someone who's really interested in ML ops and wants to, basically have another option for Jupyter notebooks and doing all of this coding in a more siloed fashion that's really hard to operationalize, that's what's coming next. And that's a big focus of our devs' time, which I'm really, really excited about. So
that is very exciting.
We've had a long-term roadmap for as long as I've been in the company, which is more than 4 years, and we very consistently delivered on that. And I think this data science module is going to be fantastic. One of the things that we shipped GA, which has been really important, and I think this will make a big difference to AWS customers who kind of have some of their data locked up in relational databases, is what about that person that needs a spreadsheet interface, right? They just got to have access to formulas. They've got to have cell-based references. How do you help them? How would you help them access data without having to write SQL queries or understand what a JDBC, ODBC bridge is and how to install it in their Windows client? What can we do, right? I think that this is something we get pretty excited about when we talk to AWS prospects and customers.
Yeah, so this is Tabulate, right? It should look pretty familiar, right? So those organizations that are stuck in all of the Excel, we're having there's a lot of interest from the finance in particular, where they're saying, listen, we're never going to get rid of Excel. I'm not here to tell you you're ever going to get rid of Excel. But for those who are trying to cut down on the risk, the leakage, right? We had one customer that came to us and said, we are exporting data 30 terabytes a week into Excel or into desktop-based tools. Guess what happened? They had multiple kind of hacks and data breaches. Shocker, right? How do we help control that to some degree? So being able to have a centralized web-based interface to do that cell-to-cell calculation, to bring in your different data elements, to be able to have the 500 plus functions that you expect inside of Excel, but inside of a platform that has all of the other functionality that we talked about, right? If I can bring up one example here, I believe it's this one. So here's a great example. I have, my data. It's coming from live data feeds, right? This isn't a number, right? So the value here is live access to your Redshift, to your whatever it is, instead of having it 2 weeks in the rear when you last got that Excel file. But still providing that level of flexibility to build out your report the way it needs to look, with VLOOKUPs, with in-row calculations, and then even being able to apply parameterization so I can do what-if analysis. If my in-house temps go up and my research goes down, my travel expenses go down, how is that going to affect everything? So same type of experience, but I'm never getting into Excel. I'm never leaving Pyramid. And I fully support things like versioning, which you see down here, right? So I can have multiple versions of the Excel file, of this tabular file, and allow multiple people to work on it and to collaborate on this type of document.
I have
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Aniket, go on.
So you talked about like the data sources, different data sources that are supported, right? Like SAP, or it could be MySQL as well. So I think my question is like two-pronged. First of all, like are there any other data sources you have on the roadmap of that you're planning on onboarding? And then the second question is a bit tricky one. Is there a potential to support NoSQL databases like DynamoDB?
Yeah. So let's take a look. If I come in here, you're going to see all of my different data sources. I think if I really go through here, ClickHouse is a new one. Dremio is a newer one inside of here for us. Starburst is a new technical partnership that we've grown with as of recent for that kind of data mesh layer. So this list of connectors is always growing, right? We obviously have all the Amazon ones inside of here that all of our customers are asking for. So whether it's even FTP type sources, or we want to use Glue, there's the Amazon S3s. This list of connectors is constantly growing with every single release. So we really try to stay on top of that. And really where a lot of our influence comes from is our customers.
Right.
we get customers all the time saying, hey, we really want this connector to make our life a lot easier. Okay, let's look into it. And the value of us being a little bit younger with a much younger code base, I can make changes a whole lot easier than if I have 20 years of legacy tech that I'm having to scramble around in order to make changes. I think that's a big value prop for us as well.
Agility, right? Yeah.
Basically, if it's got a JDBC driver, we can connect to it. We can use it as a source. Right. And if it supports a sufficient amount of the ANSI SQL standards, we can use it as an analysis direct query source too. So oftentimes what we'll do is, our customers will start working with us and say, hey, I can connect to it. This is useful. Can we promote this up to give it the full stack functionality? That kind of conversation is happening all the time, as is conversations about security, which is another big one.
Yeah.
So there's
that was what.
Go ahead, Neha.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask. So actually, we talked about everything AI, ML, how you are integrating augmented thing, and so what is like one interesting thing that I hear from my customers is compliance and security. So how do customers ensure that their data is secure and compliant if they use your platform?
Yeah, all right. We're getting into the good, hard-hitting questions. I like it. Okay, so there's a whole administration console that we can kind of talk through inside of here, but understand from an access perspective, we support multiple authentication providers. So getting into the system can be secure using single sign-on in that case for whatever you need to do. When it comes to your data, right, if we look at the different data sources, let's take the Amazon Redshift for instance, you can see that we can obviously assign to multi-tenant. We're multi-tenant, so we can assign to a specific tenant. We need the standard information as well as security. We can have encrypted SSL inside of here. And then you obviously have all of your specific connection criteria to make sure everything's very secure. So just accessing your data, and us obviously changes with every single connector that we are working with. But to connect to your data is going to be very secure and in the way that source expects you to connect, leveraging built-in security and things like that, proxy, things like that. If you are doing this and wanting Pyramid to handle some of that capability, I can come in here to my Redshift, come in here to my databases. Let's go in there. Oh, sorry, wait a second. I don't have those in here. Sorry, I apologize. I'm trying to stick to the Redshift stuff. All right, so I have all my different databases inside of here, and I have maybe this target accounts. So I can restrict security to sources, to databases, even down to the models generated by Pyramid. And we even have model settings, so I can say, okay, for this group of analysts, right, they actually cannot see these fields, right? So we can get to row level or column level security.
Yeah.
Apply overlays. I don't like how it's called company. I want it to be called something else, whatever that might be, right? Same with measures and measure overlays. And then down to member security. So I'm part of the sales organization, but I only handle, investments and insurance. So that's all I'm allowed to see, or maybe I don't handle those. This can get fairly taxing when you start to scale a deployment, though. So being able to come in and actually leverage existing scripts to be able to do that type of data and row level security is going to be extremely important. And we obviously fully support those types of things as well. So now, did that answer your question, I hope?
This is great. RLS, CLS, I love it. Yeah, this is great.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's these details that make a huge difference for enterprise customers. So think about an Amazon customer that has started out maybe with MySQL. They're using RDS, and they've created reports and analyses. They've got a ton of content in Pyramid, and they want to move that to Redshift, right? So they move that to Redshift. We can go in, and let's assume the database schema is identical. We can remap those connections, and they're up and running on Redshift. So think about the cost of ownership. We talk about it a lot. It really comes down to, the complexity, right? Can you take these complex things and make it such that it's relatively straightforward? Even if it's technical, it's straightforward to get it done. And that whole philosophy just permeates the product.
Yep, exactly. Okay, I want to go back into the presentation if that's okay. Are there any other questions, you guys?
No, this is great. I think we're getting ready. We're in the final stretch here. So we started touching on this, and so again, let's kind of recap real quick. So we said, look, we want universal access to any data. We want the universal access to analytics. We want to make sure people have the content and the experiences appropriate to their different roles. I think we've demonstrated that. I think one of the things Joe clearly gave as an example, 2 examples. One is, okay, can I connect up to that SAP BW because I can't live without that. You can't take that away from me. Absolutely. And we're very high fidelity experience leveraging that in place. And then that other thing we talked about, which is, okay, well, where's my upside? Why should I change? I think, again, Joe's giving you a whole bunch of examples of how this just isn't a bubble chart, right? But I can really, as in a self-service capacity, start to uncover what's going on, and I don't have to be a rocket scientist to do it, right? So there's upside there, right? So those are the first 2 challenges. What's the last challenge we want to talk about? And we've been alluding to it, but it's this whole idea of scalability. People want products that scale as data volumes increase and as user counts increase. And this is all about, establishing and maintaining predictable performance. I was about to tease Joe. Your queries are running too slow, because they weren't. They were like that. Boom. We're running this in a web tier. We're going against high performance databases. We're coming back sub-second response times. Now, Pyramid doesn't control your database design, but look, there's ample opportunity in a hyperscale environment like AWS to scale out those databases, right? And we can take advantage of that because we're not doing that extract. The same principle applies when we talk about, okay, now I got 10,000 reports I've got to burst, or I'm bringing in a whole division of a company, I'm adding 500 users. What do I have to do, right? So in a lot of tools that are unfortunately kind of designed for more that desktop use, they were never designed to be multi-server or to operate in a clustered environment. The Pyramid is, right? And then I think, we've been talking about this predictable cost of ownership. So I'm just going to drop one more slide in here, and then I think we'll talk about the architectural characteristics. So on the next slide, you'll see, and again, I think it's real important for people in our industry, because it's a mature industry, the BI analytics space is mature, to think about the products that they use or are familiar with, and to evaluate other alternatives like Pyramid, where companies like Pyramid have established themselves and they've gotten high rankings from customers and from industry analysts, right? And bring us into these bake-offs, because when we're in it, we do really, really well. And this is just an example of a customer. It happened to be an OEM customer with retail market share data for an entire country, believe it or not, very large database. And they did a bake-off with 4 vendors. And, these are all household names, but I'm not going to mention them. But I want you to just look at the things that are bolded there. Requires data duplication into a proprietary database. Analytics are very hard to build. Hey, it's not hard to build a pie chart. It's not hard to build a grid. But doing some of the things that Joe was showing you, which are routine, important business calculations, that can be kind of dicey in some products, right? SQL producing poor performance. It's just, we're fanatical about query performance. It's never good enough because we're perfectionists, but we're always hammering on that, right? And then what if you've got calculations, comparison calculations that cross large dimensions and do a lot of grouping? I mean, what if they just fail, and you're trying to offer this as a product to customers and trying to monetize this? Then it's a showstopper. So I don't want to dwell on this, but the important part of this is just to say, look, we go head to head every day because of who we are, and we welcome these opportunities to kind of prove out the performance. So, Joe, I know we don't have a demo around this, but I think we got just maybe 2 more slides. If you just give us some highlights about why is this thing so scalable? What are the big drivers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think why is this so scalable? Is a great question, and it's because it was built for the hyperscalers. It was built for AWS, right? We, built this in an age when, the AWSs of the world were around, right? We didn't build this 20 years ago when we had a server client, server client type of architecture. That doesn't scale. We all know that. But what does scale is a services-based architecture. So you can see down here at the bottom, there are different components. The web runs the interfaces and the dashboarding. The router routes queries to the runtime engine. The runtime engine creates that's the front engine that creates the queries that are sent to the databases, right? In a very, very optimal and efficient way. It handles security, all those components. We have the task batch processor, so all the batch ETL jobs or the distribution of reports, the AI/ML processor, right, for any of those data scientists or assistant data scientists that want to do some training of models on very large data sets. When you think about the more legacy platforms, if you were to do any one of those components at scale, it's going to affect everyone else using that platform. Right? Data scientist does a huge job. My performance on my dashboards is now nothing. It's airing out. It's lasting forever, taking forever. My ETL jobs, I have to run at 2 o'clock in the morning, right?
Right.
Because if I do it any other time, it's going to affect everyone else's experience.
Yeah.
That is not a problem with a services-based architecture. Each one of these components can be independently installed on a different AWS server and scaled up to whatever resources are needed based on your usage of the platform, right? Here's the best part, though. Oh, wait, sorry. Did you have
no, I was just going to say essentially loose coupling all your individual components.
Exactly. There's a database repository down here that really stores everything you need. So get into the weeds, but disaster recovery, as long as you have a backup of that repository, everything else can be killed and you can start from scratch and you don't miss a beat, which is really,
use
really
Aurora. You can use Aurora as your Postgres repository.
Yeah, exactly. Aurora, whatever it needs to be. The Pulse remote access server, this started really because the cloud, we wanted to use the compute and the resources in the cloud, but I had an on-prem install. Well, that's not as much of a problem anymore. A lot of people are in the cloud in AWS. What it is now being used for is geofencing. I have data that can't leave countries, that can't leave states, right? I don't want to install Pyramid 12 different places just because I'm a global organization.
Yeah.
I can install this Pulse remote access in those countries, process the data in country, and only return the results back to the end user, which is compliant with those regulations, right? So cuts down a little bit on all the different instances you have to maintain. Now, I was saying the best part about a services-based architecture from my perspective is the elastic scalability nature of it. Each one of those services is containerized, right, and deployable via Kubernetes in AWS, right? So I can start off with just one service for each one of those things. But the second I have a bunch of people on Monday morning and this runtime engine hits 70% utilization, another one spins up automatically. No human intervention needed. 5 minutes, no queries are being routed here, spin it back down, right? So being able to deploy in something like an AWS, which takes advantage of those amazing elastic scalability components in AWS within a BI and analytics platform, show me someone else that's taking it to that extent today besides us, right? That is what customers are looking for. That level of flexibility is something that is it's becoming a requirement. So many conversations, even just today, were around AWS and deploying with Kubernetes and AWS.
Yeah, I think that also allows you to just actually tap into the actual benefit of the cloud is scalability, right? Like an instant deployment.
Yeah. The alternative is let's scale my entire platform for the one day a month that everything goes out. That's not costly. I mean, you guys aren't like that because you're but you appreciate your customers as much as we do, and you want to do the right thing. And I think this approach is the right thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you look at your cost drivers, right, they're instances that are up that are not being used, right, because you had to over provision. and there's multiple redundant instances that you have to administer separately, which raise your labor costs. And again, just because of the time frame and the target deployment architecture that we selected, we've optimized that, right? Which makes it cost effective.
The best analogy I've heard is like it's like paying for a cable TV subscription when you don't even have a TV. So it's like you'd always be bothered by it if your resources are not.
This is one of the reasons, again, large enterprises that are going to do large deployments, but also, these companies, I think you guys call them digital native businesses at AWS, but they are analytics in self-service analytics has become a critical part of their product offering. They're looking at this and they're going, okay, this fits with how we want to run and we want to architect, right? And again, we're running out of time. We always run out of time. If you gave us 4 hours, we'd run out of time. One of the things we didn't talk about, but it's again built into the product, is multi-tenancy. Just this ability to serve multiple clients and keep everything separate and do it with common infrastructure. So there's really a lot to talk about. So thank you, Joe. I think we can start to wrap this up here. I think, Pyramid and AWS are a great combination. Clearly AWS is positioned and executes as a system of innovation. This is really, people get value from the infrastructure, right? And the systems of record that they move across, but the systems of innovation, the amount and variety of services and capabilities that AWS has is immense, right? And people are attracted to it. It's that services infrastructure foundation, the data foundation, increasingly the AI ML foundation, all that's there. I think what you should take away from this session is that we put a business user-friendly experience on top of all that. And I don't think it's too bold to say that AWS doesn't really have that today. I mean, we can be that business analytics front end, if you would, for this wealth of technology that AWS has. So we think that we can work together to implement all levels of functionality and do it with the entire data state. And I think that's really our goal when we talk to prospects. And that also includes, bringing along all the stuff they already have, right? And bring along your SAP data and bring along your business warehouse, right? Maybe you're moving that to SAP DataSphere. That's great. We work with DataSphere too. So, you got analysis services. You're not going to get around to refactoring that for another 3 years. No problem. We connect to that. But at the end of the day, we're going to give you that consistent experience. So that's kind of our argument. I'm just going to leave with one more slide, which is we got a ton of references on our website. So, these are just screenshots. I think, the one on the left, those are our user case studies. I think we're up to 26 customer case studies that are available on our website. On the right-hand side, those are 6, I think, of the 14 analyst reports that have been produced about Pyramid. There's a lot that you can get from our website to evaluate us. We have a community. It's open to everyone, and people join our community, get involved. We have the opportunity to get people experience with the product. We've invested very heavily in training and customer enablement and customer success. We've really been building that out over the last 24 months. And so I think we're ready to scale up and handle a lot more kind of concurrent, engagements with customers that want to take advantage of this. So, Joe, any closing thoughts? I mean, I think everybody appreciates the amount of time you spent showing us the product.
Yeah, no, obviously, if there's any questions, we're always here. We're happy to just have a conversation, if nothing else. I appreciate the time, and thank you, AWS, for letting us come on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Joe. Thanks, Dave, for
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it was a great product, feature-rich product. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I could see in the comments as well, a lot of people had a lot of questions. They had a lot of ideas. So we have posted survey links. So if you would like to reach out to Dave or Joe, please fill out the surveys. And we also posted a survey for our show. So if you could please fill it out. But yeah, thanks again. Neha, any closing thoughts? I absolutely love being on the show, and especially seeing the Gen AI part. That just blew my mind.
Yeah, there were like multiple features, and the like it was great and awesome presentation, Joe. Like the demo, you showed us all of the functionality starting from bringing data from multiple sources to security and compliance and end-to-end package. So thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the
Yeah, well,
time.
we certainly enjoyed it. We appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome.
Of course.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neha.